There are changes coming in 2027 to the diesel emissions, and we are going to share with you the limited information that we have about these changes so that you can make better decisions as you think about buying trucks here in the very near future. All right, you guys, it's Marlin with Quality Trucking Equipment, and today we're here to talk to you about a subject that I don't really care to speak on. And let me be very clear, this is not a sales tactic. This is not to scare you guys. This is not like, whoa, the sky is falling, beware. Simply sharing information with you so that you can make wise decisions, because we get to work with some really cool customers who plan their business out in advance, the trucks that they're going to purchase, and I hope this information will help you make better decisions in buying your new truck. So let's back up here just for a minute. Remember 2007, 2008, when these emissions first rolled out? You know, I was pretty young in business then. I don't remember a lot about it. I just remember the first time I opened the hood and saw all that stuff. It was absolutely scary. There was tons of stuff, components that were stacked in there that were never there before. So what they're telling us, the OEM is telling us, the changes that were made back in 2008, the changes that they're making in 2027 are going to be just as big as what we had back then. So this stuff is a big deal. We can't bury our head in the sand and say, it's not that big of a deal, we don't need to worry about it. I think we should sit up and pay attention to what's happening, because there are some big changes coming. And I don't know if it's even a question if they're coming. They are coming. That is one thing that came through very loud and clear with all the OEM dealers that I talked about, is that this is happening. There for a while, the reason we didn't talk about this more sooner is because it was unclear if it was going to happen. We heard a lot of different stories, a lot of bad information, and there was some speculation that maybe our current administration would throw all this out the window. But they invested over $2 billion into this. So trust me, they're not just going to throw it out. And the way it looks, it's going to happen. So we're going to share with you what we see and what we know as of today. So yesterday I spent a lot of time on the phone, and I called some of these dealers directly, Kenworth, Peterbilt, Mack, and asked those guys, what do you know about the emission changes that are coming in 2027? And they shared a lot of good information with me. This is not information that I just went to the internet and looked for, because I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of bad stuff out there that probably isn't true. And we've been being fed this stuff for quite a while already. So a lot of this stuff wasn't new to me. It just solidified that this is what's happening. So what I've learned, and I'm going to share with you, is there's 4 things that we're going to focus on today. And number one, that is truck pricing. That should be a really big concern to you guys. What is it going to do to the truck pricing? Number 2 is the engines. There's some changes coming to these engines. Number 3 is the warranty on this emission stuff. And then number 4 is frame rail space. What's that going to do to the frame rail space that we have available on these trucks? So let's go back through and hit on each one of these points here briefly. So truck pricing, what is it going to do to these already expensive trucks? I don't have an exact number. The range that I've been given is $15,000 to $25,000 that it's going to add to these trucks. Guys, that's a lot of money. That's expensive. That's already adding cost to an expensive chassis. I don't like the sounds of that at all. Here's how they're coming up with that. They're saying $10,000 for the components and $10,000 for the warranty. We're going to touch on the warranty in a little bit here. And we're also going to touch on in a little bit about these components that are driving up these costs. So that's what we have on cost. I don't like the sound of that. Number 2, engines. Let's talk about that for a minute. So Peterbilt, Kenworth, they use the PX7, PX9. Cummins has the L9. Those engines are going away. They are going to be replaced with a 10-liter engine. Peterbilt, Kenworth, they're going to call it a PX10. Cummins is going to call it an X10. The X12, that's a fairly popular engine, is also going away. Guys, I don't like change. The PX7, PX9, the L9 Cummins, X12 engines, those were great engines. They've been around for a long time. And anytime they discontinue an engine and bring in a new revised model, you know that there's going to be issues to work through. So that's what we have coming. The X15 will still be around, but they're going to go to a dual overhead cam, and they're also going to do that deal where they deactivate cylinders when there's no load or not a big load on the engine. Remember they had that in gas engines over the years? I had a Honda Odyssey years ago that had that. Hated it, didn't like it. I don't know of any engine manufacturer in the 400 or 500 horsepower that has ever done that. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. Personally, I do not think it sounds like a good idea at all to deactivate cylinders when you're just driving down the road without a load. So I'm leery about that. So let's talk about warranty. So obviously, if we're adding more of these components to these trucks, there's going to be warranty problems. And guys, when this first came out in 07, 08, wow, there was a lot of problems with his emission stuff. It was good for me because back then, that's when I got in the towing business. I bought my first tow truck in 08. And so here these trucks were coming out with all these new emissions on, and they were scattered up and down the highway, sitting along the road, 5-mile D rate, couldn't move. And then we could go out and tow them in. So we're adding more electrical components. It's going to be something to work through. So their idea to it is, let's put a 10-year warranty on it. Well, guess what? That sounds really great, but you're going to pay for that 10-year warranty. Now, I'll put in one clause, though. They did say that there's a good chance that they're going to bring that 10 years down to a lower number to try to lower the cost of the overall truck. Because remember what I said? The warranty is going to add $10,000 to the cost of this truck. So warranty sounds great, but that could change. They're still trying to figure that out. All right, guys, number 4 was frame rail space. Why is that an important thing to talk about today? Well, these components that they're going to add to these trucks for the emissions is going to need to go somewhere. And they can't even tell me exactly where it's going to go, but there's a good chance that it's going to go on the frame rail behind the cab. And guys, frame rail is very important in these trucks. It's important to guys that are running hook lifts, cable trucks, dump trucks, rollbacks. You need your frame rail space. Let's go take a look at the other side, because I believe if it's going to go anywhere, it's going to be on the passenger side over here. So look already how full it is underneath the hood. There's a lot of stuff under there. Can you imagine adding more components there? And then we come to the back here. Look at that huge, I call it an exhaust, but that's your DOC and all that good stuff in there. Now they want to add something else that's going to be similar to that. And where is it going to go? Now, one of the reasons that we often get what I call the weed burner exhaust instead of the exhaust coming up behind the cab here is because that takes up frame rail space right here. You get your exhaust coming out, going up the cab. It's another component that goes in here. So that's why we actually like that exhaust setup, because it leaves us frame rail space. But look at that nice spot right there. That's where you guys can put a lot of stuff, an additional toolbox, waste can holders, cone holders, shovel and broom holders. I think it's important that you have that. And I'll be disappointed if they take up some of that space, especially in the big Class 8 trucks. We are already so limited on the Class 8 trucks on frame rail space. So I'm going to be very disappointed if they take up more of that for their components that they want to add to these trucks. So there's my take on that. We'll see what they actually roll out with. All right, guys, let's talk about this new and greatly improved emission system that's coming out. So first of all, you know, I think we could probably all agree that we don't want to go back to the old days. We actually might, some of us. But, you know, remember the old trucks where they were belching black smoke and they smoked all the time? You know, you don't see that anymore at all. On my farm at home, I have an old 1987 International tri-axle dump truck, and I love that truck. But man, does that thing smoke. It's got a 400 Cummins in it, and I know that it's turned up. I didn't turn it up, but man, I can pile that thing full of dirt, and it hauls down the road like there's nothing behind it. The problem is in the wintertime, if I pull it into my shop and run it, it's belching out smoke at an idle, and it fills my whole shop up with smoke. And that can get frustrating. So, you know, when I look at these new trucks and how we can run them in our shop today, and they don't smoke everything up, I do like that we have cut that down. But let's talk about this added stuff that they're going to put on these engines. So, first of all, the current emissions that we have right now, do not immediately work on a cold engine. So this here new emission is going to kick in within seconds of you starting a cold engine. So that should make you feel good knowing that. All right, what is it? It's an electric heater. It is a 48-volt electric heater that they're going to put in this emission. Now, here's the sad part. You're still going to have your diesel exhaust fluid. That's not going away. I was hoping that maybe they would eliminate it and use this electric heater for everything, but no. You're still going to have your DEF fluid, your DEF tank. You're still going to have to add it just like before. This is additional. How are they going to operate this 48-volt electric heater? They're going to put on a completely separate alternator / generator on the engine that's belt driven. That's about all I know about that, but it's a completely separate alternator that'll go in the front of the engine and back to the engine. Where are they going to put it? It's already full. But that is what's going to be done to power this electric heater, is that 48-volt generator. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to work. But again, it's more components, it's more stuff going on these engines, and it's more things that can fail. And one of the reasons that I don't like to think about these 2027 emissions and you guys getting into these trucks, I hate being a guinea pig. Guys, anytime something comes to the market, there's problems. They can test this stuff over and over and over in their factory. But the real true test is when you go out in the cold, hard world and put this truck to work under a load in some of the worst conditions. That's when the weak spots in these components are going to show up. So I hate being the guinea pig. Again, I don't want to scare you guys on this stuff, but I want you to think about that. Do you want to buy a truck in 2027 with this stuff that hasn't been proven? Because remember, we'll go back to 07, 08. There was a lot of problems. And I'll tell anybody today, you know, those first emission engines I felt were bad, but they have come a long ways. They made a lot of changes. You know, I still get people ask me all the time, like, hey, what are the emissions like on these new trucks? And I can tell you we don't see near the issues right now as what we did back in like 2010, 2012. It seems somewhere about 2015 they made some really positive changes and they have a lot less problems. While we're talking about that, I'll talk about deletes. You know, I don't promote that. There's still some guys that do it. It was a really big thing for a while. Some of the big guys that were doing it got in trouble, stopped doing it. You know, there's not many people that do it anymore. And yesterday I saw a news article that said the guys that were in trouble, they're not getting into as much trouble now because of some of the current administration. I don't know if that's all true. But what I'm saying is, I don't know if it'll even be possible to delete this stuff. And again, I'm not promoting it, but you know there's going to be people that are going to try to figure it out. So there's what we know on that new system, the new components that are coming out in 2027. All right, guys, so with all that information I shared with you, what should you as a customer do with that information? Here's a couple things that I thought of. Number one is, I think if you're kind of on the fence about buying a new truck, if you're thinking about adding to your fleet or upgrading, I believe that you should do it here in 2026. I really think you should do that. So it's the trucks that are built in January of 2027 that these emissions are going to start. There's 2027 models out already, but those don't have those emissions. It's the 27 starting in the beginning of January that these emissions are going to take effect. So yes, I think that you should be buying a truck if you're on the fence about it. That is actually a bad thing for us. You know, we would love to sell as many trucks as possible here in 26. But the reality is we can only do so much here. You know, we could look at it and say, wow, we have the potential to sell how many more trucks because of this that's coming on. But guys, I'm not going to do it. I've learned some things, some really difficult lessons over the years about explosive growth. And explosive growth is not a good thing. Because here's what I think could happen. We could sell a lot of trucks in 26, and 27 could be very dead. I don't want to lay off people. I don't want to have extra inventory laying around, because think about that. If we want to sell a ton of trucks in 26, that means we have to have the chassis here. That means we have to have hoists here, tarps, pumps, PTOs, fenders, bumpers. I mean, we need all them components to make one truck. And I'm not going to have a whole ton of inventory out here in 27 if we're not going to be selling trucks. Like I said, I've learned the hard way. I'm not going to do it again. So that's why I feel like this could be a bad thing for us if we sold a bunch in 26 and 27 could be really dead. But I will tell you that we are working on a plan internally within our company of how we're going to handle this depending which way it goes. And that's why we're talking to the OEM dealers a lot. Like, what are they seeing? What are they hearing? And what's happening so that we can adjust our business model accordingly. And that's why I'm sharing this with you guys so that you can also do the same thing as you think about buying trucks. Buy them now, and we'll figure out what to do in 2027. Going back to 07, 08, you talk to them OEM dealers that were selling trucks back then, and they said sales were terrible. I had one dealer tell me that he would often take his cell phone and call the sales line just to make sure that the phones were working, because he'd sit there and no phones would ring, and he'd be like, surely the phones are down. And he said every time he'd call, the sales line would ring in his office, and he knew that people simply weren't buying trucks. So again, guys, this is not a scare tactic. This is not the end of the world is here. It's none of that at all. I just hope it can help you make a good decision. I think there's some things that are going to be really big coming up in 27 with these emissions, and I think you should be aware of them. And together, we'll learn. As we get more information, we're going to share that with you so that you can make wise decisions. So guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear what you know about this. Put it in the comments below. I will tell you again, there's a lot of bad information out there. I talked to my Peterbilt dealer yesterday, and he said, I've got guys calling me and saying, hey, I heard I can order a truck with 0 emissions on it. I would like to do that. And he said, there's nothing like that. So guys, the emission stuff is here, but I'd still like to hear from you guys. So put it in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And let me know if I was wrong on any of the information I shared. I can always learn from my customers. So I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed studying into this topic and getting as much information as I could. And as we get more, we'll share it with you. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep it quality.